That early spring dawn in Seattle felt touched by something uncanny. A thin, cold breeze drifting through the cherry blossoms, as if carrying a warning of change. Olivia Miller, dressed in her elegant red gown, paused in the middle of her wide garden, her eyes narrowing at a soft rustle, no louder than a fallen petal. On the dew-kissed grass, she found Max, a German shepherd puppy so tiny he could curl perfectly into the center of her palm. His breath was as fragile as mist, yet his eyes held a strange sharpness, as though he had fallen from a world not meant for human hands. When Olivia reached out and gently touched him, the pet tracking band on her wrist suddenly flashed in an irregular pattern, nothing like any alert she had ever seen. A coded signal, arriving at the exact moment fate led her to him. Max lifted his miniature paw, placing it on her wrist, as if saying without words, "I didn't land here by accident." Olivia swallowed, a tremor running through her chest, and the moment she whispered her first words, the entire garden seemed to fall into breathless silence. If you're ready to follow this mysterious journey, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Spring in Seattle arrived with a kind of quiet that felt almost deceptive, as if the city were inhaling deeply before revealing something unexpected. The air carried a crisp chill left over from winter, and a soft mist hovered close to the ground, weaving through the rows of cherry trees lining the forest trail at the edge of the wealthy Evergreen Heights district. Their branches were heavy with pale pink blossoms, some already falling like shy confetti onto pathways of polished stone. Not far above those trees, a shadow cut across the early morning light. A large hawk, its wings broad and powerful, its feathers a mottled blend of ash and rust, soared in a smooth arc while scanning the earth below with the cold precision of a seasoned hunter. This particular hawk, older, slightly scarred across its left wing from a territorial fight years ago, moved with the commanding grace of a predator who knew the sky belonged to him. As it drifted over the forest's edge, something caught its sharp amber eye. A tiny creature curled beside a broken patch of roots. It was a German shepherd puppy, but shockingly small, no larger than a hand, with fur still damp as if from recent rain or a mother it no longer had. The hawk tilted its wings and descended swiftly, talons extended, not out of malice but instinct, mistaking the helpless pup for easy prey. Its claws closed around the little body with surprising gentleness for a beast of its size, and with a powerful beat of wings, the hawk lifted the fragile puppy into the sky. The puppy, no more than a few days old, let out a thin, quivering whimper as the world spun beneath it. Its small frame trembled violently. Patches of its tan and black fur clung together, and its ears, still soft and folded, twitched weakly as if resisting the wind. The hawk carried it higher, intending to bring it back to a nest perched deep within the cedar cliffs outside the city. But fate rarely respects the plans of predator or prey. As the hawk reached the boundary of Evergreen Heights, a district known for its immaculate mansions, polished gates, and lawns so green they looked painted, the wind suddenly shifted. Spring gusts, unpredictable in their whimsy, surged upward from the coastline. The hawk faltered mid-flight, wings buckling for a split second. It regained balance, but the sudden jolt loosened its grip. The puppy slipped. For one breathless moment it spun helplessly in the air, then plummeted downward in a small, curled ball toward the endless sea of emerald grass below. At that exact moment, Olivia Miller stood in her garden, unaware of how a story was about to reshape her life. Olivia was a striking woman in her early 30s, tall, elegant, with a presence that blended confidence and softness in equal measure. Her dark chestnut hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, catching the morning light like strands of silk. She wore a deep crimson dress, simple in shape but impossibly refined, paired with a matching red coat draped effortlessly over her arms. People often said Olivia looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine, but those close to her knew her beauty was accompanied by a quiet, introspective nature, shaped by growing up in a wealthy family where silence often replaced affection. She was on a business call, pacing slowly across the patio as sunlight filtered through the cherry blossoms, when she heard it. A soft thud, so gentle it could have been a fallen apple, followed by the faintest whimper. Olivia paused. Her brows drew together slightly, an expression of curiosity and concern. She ended her call mid-sentence and followed the sound into the center of her garden. There, nestled in a patch of grass still jeweled with morning dew, lay the tiny German shepherd pup. For a moment, Olivia simply stared, stunned by its impossibly small size, barely the length of her palm, fur mussed and damp, ribs visible beneath the thin layer of fluff. Its sides rose and fell in uneven, desperate breaths. Across its back were faint, thin red marks, light enough to suggest the hawk had not meant harm, but deep enough to reveal the truth of what had happened. Olivia knelt down, the red fabric of her dress pooling elegantly around her as she reached forward with trembling hands. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, her voice softening. She scooped the pup gently into her palms. It was shockingly light, like holding a scrap of warm cloth rather than a living creature. Its head lolled weakly to one side. Its nose was cold. Its paws, no bigger than flower petals, rested limply against her skin. "Hey, little one, stay with me," she murmured, feeling her chest tighten with a mix of protectiveness and fear. Suddenly, as she lifted the pup closer, its tiny body shuddered, and then its breathing seemed to falter, the shallow rhythm slowing, breaking. Its head drooped completely, eyes barely slitting open before drooping shut again. Olivia's breath froze. She looked around for help, heart pounding beneath her red coat, but the garden was silent except for the whisper of cherry blossoms drifting through the air. She stared down at the little creature in her hands, her voice trembling. "Are you still breathing?" Olivia's hands trembled as she pressed the fragile bundle against her chest, the warmth of her red coat barely shielding the tiny German shepherd puppy from the cold spring air. The moment she felt its breath falter, panic surged through her, swift, electric, overwhelming. She hurried across the lawn toward her sleek black SUV, a luxury model known for its immaculate shine and quiet engine, though right now she barely noticed either. With one hand she pulled the car door open, the other keeping the pup secured against her body. As she settled into the driver's seat, cherry blossom petals, shaken loose by the breeze, kissed the windshield, sliding slowly across the glass like pale pink tears. Olivia started the car, and the vehicle shot forward into the mist-threaded morning streets of Seattle, splashing through shallow puddles left behind from a late-night drizzle. The city felt strangely hollow. Traffic was light, and the faint reflection of spring rain glimmered on asphalt like molten glass. Olivia's breaths came sharp and uneven. Despite being raised in a mansion, accustomed to having every answer and every resource at her fingertips, she had never faced a moment where money meant nothing and seconds meant everything. "Please, stay with me," she whispered, glancing at the limp form in her lap. The puppy's fur, a mix of black and tan, was pressed against her palm, and she could feel the faintest tremor from its tiny chest, too faint to reassure her. The drive felt impossibly long, though only minutes had passed when she arrived at the sliding doors of Northwood Veterinary Clinic, a respected facility tucked between a coffee shop and a quiet row of townhouses. The clinic's exterior was modest: tan brick, clean windows, a bright blue sign, but inside the staff were known for handling both emergencies and the most delicate rescues. As soon as Olivia burst through the doors, her heels clicking sharply against polished tile, a woman at the front desk looked up. The woman, Sarah Jennings, a slim, fair-skinned receptionist with light blonde hair tied back into a tidy ponytail, instantly recognized panic. Sarah had a gentle face with soft features and expressive blue eyes that often reflected empathy before a word was spoken. She was known for being patient and unusually calm, a trait shaped by her past as a volunteer for an animal shelter that often dealt with difficult cases. "Is that a puppy?" Sarah asked, her voice tightening. "He's not breathing right," Olivia choked. "Please, help!" Sarah rushed forward, guiding her toward a white door marked Emergency Care. "Dr. Brown is inside," she assured, pushing the door open. Dr. Daniel Brown, a man in his mid-40s with a square jaw, short pepper-gray hair, and a carefully trimmed beard, stood under the bright clinical lights reviewing a chart. His posture was straight, disciplined, the posture of someone who had spent decades balancing life and death, decisions without breaking. His deep-set hazel eyes carried a kind of stern compassion. He was known for being honest, unwavering, and sometimes painfully realistic. Part of that realism came from losing his childhood dog in an accident, an event that hardened him, but also made him fight fiercely for every surviving patient under his care. When he turned toward Olivia, his brows pulled together. "What happened?" he asked, stepping forward as she gently placed the puppy into his hands. I found him in my garden," Olivia said, her voice cracking. "He's tiny. I think he fell. Please do something." Daniel examined the pup with swift but delicate movements, his fingers tracing the thin red marks on the pup's back. "These are talon scrapes," he muttered. "A large bird must have dropped him." He lifted the puppy closer, watching its chest struggle to rise. "He's extremely small, too small for his age. His chances are very low." Olivia felt her stomach plummet. "I don't care about chances," she said quickly. "Please, do everything you can, even if it's 1%. Just try." Daniel paused. He had seen people beg before. Some begged out of fear, some out of guilt. But Olivia's voice carried something deeper, an earnest mix of vulnerability and determination. He nodded. "All right, let's fight for him." He signaled to Nurse Miguel Torres, a broad-shouldered man in his late 20s with warm brown skin, dark curly hair, and a reassuring smile. Miguel was known for his steady hands and even steadier nerves, shaped by growing up in a big family where chaos was normal and problem-solving became second nature. "Warm lamp, incubator, micro-syringe," Daniel instructed. Miguel moved with practiced speed. Daniel placed the puppy on a heated towel beneath a bright lamp, the white clinic lights amplifying every tremble and twitch of the frail body. He then brought out a tiny syringe filled with milk substitute, the smallest the clinic carried. Olivia stood just a few feet away, hands clasped, her red dress vibrant and out of place under the sterile lights. Her breath shook each time the puppy's chest hesitated. Daniel leaned in, placing the cool metal of the stethoscope against the fragile ribs. The room went silent. Only the soft hum of equipment filled the air. Then, the heart monitor flickered to life. A weak beep, then a gap. Then another beep, so faint it was almost imaginary. Daniel froze. The line dipped, stretched, slowed. A thin, flat line threatening to swallow the rhythm entirely. Olivia's nails dug into her palms as she whispered, "Please, don't stop." Daniel held his breath, eyes locked on the fragile signal, waiting, hoping, fearing the next second would decide everything. The heart monitor steadied into a weak but undeniable rhythm, a thin flicker of life refusing to surrender. Dr. Daniel Brown inhaled slowly as he removed the stethoscope from his ears, his expression serious yet touched with a faint glimmer of hope. The fragile German shepherd puppy lay inside the incubator, a transparent chamber glowing with soft warmth, its tiny chest rising in hesitant but persistent breaths. With the line between survival and loss razor thin, Daniel knew he had to act with precision, caution, and relentless focus. He straightened his coat and turned to the small team gathered near him. His voice carried calm authority. "We're not out of danger," he said, "but we have a path." He began outlining the care plan with the clarity of someone who had walked this tightrope between fragility and hope many times. "First," he said, "nutritional microfeeding. 1 drop at a time. Too much, and he can aspirate. Too little, and he weakens." He looked to Nurse Miguel Torres, the broad-shouldered young man whose steady hands rarely shook. Miguel gave a determined nod, his warm brown eyes reflecting both fatigue and commitment. "Temperature must remain constant," Daniel continued. "Max can't regulate his own body heat. Every degree matters." At the edge of the room, observing quietly, stood Olivia Miller, wrapped in her signature red coat. Days had passed since she first carried Max through the clinic doors, and though she remained beautiful, tall, graceful, her chestnut waves still framing her face, her polished exterior had softened into something more human. The circles beneath her eyes told stories of sleepless nights, and her red lipstick, once flawless, now faded into bare traces. Olivia took a slow breath as she approached the incubator. "What else can I do?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. Daniel hesitated before answering. "Gentle tactile stimulation. He needs to know he's not alone. Light massage helps his muscles develop." He demonstrated by placing a gloved fingertip lightly along Max's hind leg, barely brushing the fur. The tiny pup twitched, a faint movement, but unmistakably a response. Olivia's lips parted in awe. She extended a trembling hand, touching the glass of the incubator. "He felt that?" "He's aware," Daniel confirmed. "He recognizes your scent. He's fighting because he knows someone is waiting for him." Over the next days, Olivia arrived every morning like clockwork, no matter how immaculate her red dress looked when she stepped out of her luxury car. It always seemed slightly wrinkled by the time she sat beside the incubator for hours at a time. She often folded her coat neatly over her lap and leaned close to Max, speaking softly about her childhood, how she grew up behind tall gates and cold marble walls, how loneliness echoed inside her massive home despite its beauty. She confessed things she had never told anyone. Max, small as a mouse and fragile as spring frost, blinked slowly, as if absorbing each word. Sometimes he wiggled a paw. Other times he nudged his tiny nose toward the edge of the incubator when Olivia brought her hand near. as if memorizing her presence. "He's imprinting on you," said Sarah Jennings, the slim, fair-skinned receptionist who occasionally peeked into the room with curious eyes. Sarah had grown fond of the little pup, even though her job kept her mostly at the front desk. "He knows your voice." Olivia smiled faintly. "I hope he knows he's safe." But not everyone shared the same belief. Word of the tiniest German shepherd the clinic had ever seen spread quickly around Evergreen Heights. Curious neighbors stopped by, whispering with fascination or skepticism. Among the staff, the exhaustion of extra shifts and emotional toll began drawing murmurs of doubt. One of the veterinary assistants, a tall, red-haired man named Connor Wells, who had a lean build and freckles across his fair skin, expressed his concern to Miguel. Connor was a good-hearted but blunt individual, someone shaped by a strict upbringing and a harsh father who taught him not to waste effort on lost causes. "Daniel's working miracles," Connor said quietly. "But this little guy, he shouldn't have survived the fall. Maybe we're pushing too hard." Miguel gave him a look filled with reproach. "Every fight is worth it," he said firmly. "Even the smallest life matters." Despite Miguel's conviction, doubts hovered in the air like lingering shadows. A few days into the treatment, as Daniel performed a routine inspection, he frowned. "His temperature is irregular," he murmured, "and his skin tone slightly pale." Olivia stood quickly. "What does that mean?" Daniel ran a careful finger along Max's belly, studying the faint discoloration. "It could be an early infection. Very early, but dangerous for someone this small." His voice grew heavier, his jaw tightening. "If we don't intervene now, we could lose everything we've gained." Olivia swallowed hard. "What do we do?" Daniel removed his glasses, setting them down with deliberate care. "There's a treatment protocol. Strong medication. But for a puppy this size, the risks are significant." Olivia's heart pounded. "How significant?" "He might not withstand the dosage," Daniel admitted. "But doing nothing will almost certainly result in decline. It is a choice between a dangerous chance or accepting the natural outcome." Silence filled the room. Olivia stared at Max, lying so peacefully in the glow of the incubator, unaware of the crossroads waiting for him. Her breathing trembled. Daniel stepped aside and returned moments later with a single sheet of paper, the consent form for high-risk intervention. "I need your decision," he said, his voice low but steady. Olivia reached for the pen, her fingers trembling as she looked at Max, struggling faintly within the warm chamber. She closed her eyes, tears all pushing against her lashes. The weight of the moment pressed like a stone against her ribs. Was she willing to risk everything on a treatment that could save him or break him? With the pen hovering over the signature line, she wondered whether this fragile life, which had already endured the sky and a brutal fall, could survive one more test. The pen felt heavier than anything Olivia Miller had ever held, heavier even than the responsibilities she had inherited from her powerful family. When she signed the consent form, her hand trembled, not from fear alone but from the weight of knowing she had chosen a path that could either save Max or be the last thing she ever did for him. As soon as her signature dried, Dr. Daniel Brown nodded once with solemn resolve. The danger ahead was unmistakable, but so was the necessity. He turned to the small team in the dimly lit emergency room. "Begin the protocol," he said. His voice was steady, sharper than usual, carved with urgency. Under the white glare of sterile lights, Daniel prepared the first microdose of medication. It was a nearly invisible volume, clear as glass, held inside the smallest syringe the clinic owned. He injected it with painstaking precision into the line connected to Max's fragile body. Nurse Miguel Torres hovered nearby, jaw tight, monitoring every beep of the heart machine. Even his usually calm brown eyes flickered with concern. On the opposite side of the incubator, Sarah Jennings, the slim, blonde receptionist, had paused her duties at the front desk to assist. She wore light blue scrubs now, her expression taut. Sarah's gentle features, usually open and warm, were drawn with tension, her empathy making her vulnerable, her past experiences with dying shelter animals pressing hard on her heart. Every breath in the room felt synchronized with the fragile rhythm inside the incubator. Heart rate, holding, Miguel whispered. Breathing, shallow but consistent. Daniel nodded but did not relax. He adjusted the microdrip IV, then tapped gently on the incubator's side. We're buying him time. Now we stabilize temperature. But as he reached for the thermostat control, a deep, distant rumble spread across the night sky. A warning growl of thunder that rattled the windows of the Northwood Clinic. A spring storm was rolling in, and fast. Within minutes, the skies outside erupted. Rain hammered the roof, wind clawed at the gutters, and lightning flashed so brightly its glare spilled through the clinic windows. Sarah flinched. The storm wasn't forecasted to be this strong. Seattle storms never ask permission, Daniel muttered, focusing on Max. But then the lights flickered, once, twice, a third time. A high-pitched alarm chirped as the main power grid buckled. "Backup generator," Daniel commanded. Miguel sprinted out the door, trying to activate it manually. The lights dimmed to a reddish glow, the incubator humming more sluggishly on lower voltage. Olivia, still in her red dress and coat, stood frozen near the doorway. Her chestnut hair clung to her cheeks, damp from the mist she had run through earlier, her expression twisted with fear. "Is he safe on this power?" she asked, voice barely audible. "For now," Daniel said. But she heard the hesitation. She stepped nearer, placing a trembling hand against the incubator glass. "Max, hang in there." Another rumble of thunder shook the ceiling tiles. The emergency lights wavered ominously. At that moment, the clinic doors swung open with a gust of wind and the smell of rain. Charles Miller, Olivia's father, entered. Tall, sharply dressed in a dark tailored suit despite the storm, his salt and pepper hair combed back with meticulous care. He carried authority the way others carried breath. His angular features, hard jawline, and piercing gray eyes marked him as a man accustomed to shaping the world to his will. "Olivia," he said, voice stern yet low. "We need to talk." Olivia stiffened. Her father rarely visited unannounced, and never during a storm. "Not now, Dad." Charles stepped closer, ignoring the medical chaos around him. "I've heard about the puppy. If it survives, we should consider making it the face of a new corporate campaign. Something emotional, something powerful. A narrative of hope the shareholders would love." Olivia turned toward him slowly, disbelief flashing in her tired eyes. "He's not a campaign," she whispered fiercely. "He's a life." Charles shrugged as if they were discussing an investment. "Every life has value, but some have greater public appeal. People admire miracles. We could—" "No," Olivia said more firmly. "Max belongs to me, not the company, not the brand, not your boardroom." Charles stared at her, surprised by her sudden defiance. But before he could reply, the storm answered for him. A thunderclap struck so close the walls seemed to vibrate. The lights flickered violently. The generator whined under the strain. In the emergency room, all machines connected to Max beeped faster, alarms flashing red as the voltage dropped. Miguel raced back inside. "Generators close to overload." "We need stable power," Daniel snapped. He was adjusting the medication schedule, his hands moving fast but precise. Sparks of fear crept into Olivia's chest as she watched Daniel lean over Max, adjusting a final setting on the IV pump. But just then, the lights died. Everything went black. The hum of machines collapsed into silence. The sudden darkness swallowed the room whole, leaving only thunder as their witness. Olivia gasped. Sarah whispered a frightened prayer. Charles steadied himself against the wall, shocked for once into stillness. Miguel swore under his breath, and Daniel, already reaching, fumbled for the emergency flashlight clipped to the counter. Within seconds, faint illumination returned, casting long shadows across the clinic walls. The incubator flickered back to life on minimal reserve power. Everyone rushed to the monitor. The screen glowed weakly, then dimmed. And when the numbers blinked into view, the room felt colder than the storm outside. Max's heartbeat line was empty, flat, silent, a void. Olivia pressed her hand to her mouth, unable to breathe. Daniel's eyes widened, but he didn't move. Not yet. Not until he was sure. Not until he understood whether the tiny fighter had truly gone still, or whether the darkness had only tricked them. For a moment, the world inside the dim emergency room felt frozen in a silence so deep it nearly swallowed hope whole. The storm still growled outside, rain hammering the windows like frantic fingers begging to be let in. But inside the Northwood Clinic, every beating heart waited for one single sound, the return of a life that hung by the thinnest thread imaginable. When all machines had gone dark, Dr. Daniel Brown didn't hesitate. Years of experience, of heartbreak, of seeing lives blink in and out like fragile flames, pushed him forward with instinct sharper than fear. He scooped the limp German Shepherd puppy into his hands, cradling Max against his chest. Daniel's arms were strong, his build shaped by both outdoor hobbies and the physical demands of veterinary work. Yet the way he held Max now, gently, almost reverently, made him seem softer than anyone had ever seen him. "Come on, little fighter," he murmured, bringing the puppy close to his body heat. The deep lines of worry on his angular face seemed carved deeper by the faint illumination of his flashlight. His trimmed beard cast shadows that made his expression look harsher, but his eyes betrayed something else. Refusal. Refusal to let the night win. Nurse Miguel Torres was already working to restore the incubator's settings, manually resetting the temperature regulators with tense, precise motions. Sweat beaded on Miguel's forehead, darkening the curls near his hairline. "Power's back," Miguel said, voice tight. "Everything's rebooting." Slowly. Olivia stood frozen at the threshold, one hand pressed against the doorframe, as if it was the only thing keeping her standing. Her red dress, so bright, so bold, looked almost surreal under the flickering lights. Her chestnut hair clung to her damp cheeks. Mascara streaked down her face in trembling lines. The usually immaculate Olivia now looked human, completely, painfully human. "Daniel, is he?" Her voice cracked so softly it was nearly inaudible. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He placed Max back inside the incubator the second the system showed a faint return of warmth. Then, with hands steady but breath strained, he began chest compressions, the gentlest version possible, pressing a single gloved fingertip against the tiny ribcage in careful rhythm. "Stay with us," Daniel whispered, leaning close. "You made it this far. You don't stop now." The room held its breath with him. Seconds stretched, warped, became unbearable. Sarah Jennings, usually composed, covered her mouth with both hands to muffle a sob. Even Charles Miller, Olivia's formidable father, stood rigid, his expression cracking for the first time into something raw and uncertain. Then, a sound, tiny, faint, fragile. Beep! Olivia's knees nearly buckled. Another beep followed, then another. The waveform trembled onto the screen like a ghost slowly regaining form. "He's back," Miguel breathed, almost, laughing with disbelief. Olivia stumbled forward, pressing her palms to the incubator glass. Tears streamed fresh down her cheeks, streaking more mascara. "Max! Max!" Daniel stepped back at last, exhaling shakily. For the first time in hours, his stern expression eased into something that resembled hope. "He's stabilizing," he said softly. "Weak, but stable." The storm outside began to calm, as if acknowledging the tiny victory unfolding inside the clinic. Spring melted gradually into early summer, and with it, Max transformed from a living whisper into a playful, determined German Shepherd puppy. He remained smaller than average, delicate-boned, with large, watchful eyes too wise for his young age. But he grew into strength with every passing week. His fur turned soft and fluffy, a warm blend of tan and deep black. His paws, once barely visible, now tapped eagerly across the clinic floor. And every time he saw Olivia, he bounded toward her with a joy that lit the room. Olivia visited daily at first, then brought him home permanently once he was cleared. Her mansion in Evergreen Heights, once elegant but cold, now echoed with soft barks, tiny footsteps, and the rustle of toys scattered across marble floors. Olivia, still dressed in her signature reds, found herself smiling more often, her once lonely world brightening with Max's presence. She opened a small charity fund dedicated to abandoned animals, a quiet, meaningful act of rebellion against the corporate machinery her father expected her to uphold. Instead of using Max as a marketing symbol, she used his story to encourage compassion, not commerce. Charles Miller watched from a distance at first, skeptical. But the more he saw his daughter's transformation, strength, gentleness, resolve, the more pride replaced his old rigidity. One afternoon, nearly a year after the storm, Olivia and Max strolled through a sunlit Seattle park. Cherry blossoms returned in a riot of color, painting the sky in soft pinks and whites. Max trotted beside her, tail high, ears perked, moving with the confidence of a survivor who had conquered gravity itself. A shadow passed overhead. Olivia looked up. A large hawk circled above, broad wings glowing golden in the sunlight. Max paused, gazing skyward. But he did not cower. He did not shrink. He simply watched. Calm, steady. A warrior who had faced the sky once and survived it. Olivia knelt, wrapping her arms around his neck, burying her face into his soft fur. In her red dress, framed by spring light, she looked like a figure pulled from a myth, a guardian and a saved soul intertwined. As they returned home, she stood with Max on the porch of her mansion. The evening sunlight washed over them both, turning her red dress into a warm blaze and giving Max's fur a golden sheen. In that gentle glow, their story felt complete. A fall from the sky had brought Max into Olivia's world. Determination had kept him alive. Kindness had given him a future. And love, steady, quiet, unwavering, had made them a family. Sometimes fate doesn't break us, Olivia thought, holding Max close. Sometimes it guides us exactly where we were meant to be. In the quiet glow of that spring evening, as Olivia held Max close beneath the red-tinted sky, one truth became unmistakably clear. Some lives survive not by strength alone, but by grace. Max should never have lived. Logic, medicine, and circumstance all pointed to loss. But sometimes, God places his hand gently upon the smallest creatures, reminding us that miracles are not rare. We simply forget to notice them. In our daily lives, between work, noise, and endless worries, we often overlook the fragile blessings God sends our way. A moment of kindness from a stranger, a second chance we didn't deserve, a breath of hope when we needed it most. Max's story is a whisper from above, a reminder that no life is too small, no heart too fragile for God to protect. And when humans choose compassion, when we fight for the weak, when we refuse to give up, we become instruments of that divine miracle. If this story touched your heart, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel so the message of hope can reach even more people. And may God bless you, bless your family, bless your pets, and bless every quiet miracle waiting in your life. Amen.